My Bullwinkle's done. Okay, we are going to hit record in 3, 2, 1. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Rock in a Hard Place podcast. My name is Chris Cooner. I am a DJ with Broken FM. You can check us out online at broken.fm. Joining me today, as always, on this episode, my good friend and fellow rocker, Paul Gibson.
Hey, guys, what's going on? I'm feeling very metal this morning. I don't know why, but I just feel like I have the desire to rock and get in a mosh pit or something. It's just kind of fun. But anyway, because I host the Christian Rock 20 Countdown, I don't go into mosh pits because I might damage something, and that would be bad.
Yes.
So anyway, if you want to know more about that show, then you can check out thechristianrock20.com, and I get to hang out with Chris every week, which is always a good thing.
Absolutely. Having fun, doing, not much. Yeah. So, let's see here. We've got a few newsy things to cover this morning before we get into to the main episode information. So many crowdfunding campaigns going on. I almost said Kickstarters, but not everyone is using Kickstarter to do their crowdfunding. Right. We were talking about Fireflight is actually doing a crowdfunding, but they are using
pledgemusic.com, and they still have 25 days left, and they're only at 49% of their goal. And I would encourage you, if you listen to this podcast and you like them, please help them out. If nothing else, help spread the word, because thus far it hasn't gotten spread nearly enough, even by the band themselves. I think they're trying to be humble through this process, which unfortunately doesn't usually yield really good things in the crowdsourcing world. So
no.
They got a little under a month left to go, and they got about halfway to go. But I think they've had this thing going for 2 months. I mean, it feels like it's been going forever. So,
well, that's funny because I just remember only hearing about it a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, well, maybe it was a couple of weeks ago.
Maybe it just feels like it's been longer than it has.
Could be, but regardless, it's one of those things where it's. Let me see. I'm looking at their updates. So their first thing when they went up was on March 14th. So it's been a month.
It's been a month. Okay.
So, I mean, it was about a 2-month long campaign. Maybe it was like 45 days or 60 days or something. I don't know. But it was somewhere in that range. But it feels like with a band of Fireflight's notoriety that they should be funded like a long time ago.
Yeah.
I feel like they could have been if they were pushing it really hard, and I think that they need to. But
yeah. Well, and that's the thing that you and I have both said is the biggest thing about doing a crowdfunding campaign is if you're not promoting it yourself, odds are no one else is going to just decide to promote it for you.
Right.
So you have a choice. You can either be almost to the point of annoying about getting the word out there and drive people to take care of it. But, I mean, there's also other things to consider. Like here in the U.S., tax day was 2 days ago. So I guarantee you that there's a lot of people thinking about paying their taxes and what they owe in that regard, not so much dropping $20 or more on a crowdfunding campaign.
Right. And I will fully admit that I'm very excited about this record. I mean, Don was saying that they're going to have a bunch of different producers, so there's going to be a lot of different sounds being brought out of them on this record, and they've done a lot of songwriting with other people, and I think that that's really cool. I hope that the record gets made.
Yeah, we'll have to see. I mean, 29 days, halfway there. Most of these crowdfunding type campaigns, the money doesn't come in until towards the very end.
Right.
An example of that not happening would be like Project 86, who kept extending theirs because people kept giving.
Right. Which is funny because to me that seems almost backwards, but it worked for them.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to complain. I mean, they did so well. And at the end, they were throwing out crazy stuff. They're like, if we hit this goal, then he's going to bring the fro back, like from their first album. So I'm guessing that was a wig, but apparently maybe he's going to wear it in concert, or at least take some more photos with the fro wig or something.
Yeah, I don't know.
They're bringing back like songs that they had not played for years, like maybe off their first album, that they said they would throw into their set on their upcoming tour if they hit a certain goal. And I mean, pretty much every time they set a new goal, even though it was only like another $1,000, people rushed to make it, and a bunch of people were really excited, like even just about stuff like, oh, they're gonna play something off the first album. That is so dope. I'm gonna go pledge another $10 just so that I can see that.
Just to make that happen.
I was like, wow, that's cool. I mean, I don't have that, but whatever. I mean, I think that's really nifty. So I'm impressed. They've seemed to have figured out the magic formula, and I think that Andrew was talking about that in depth when we talked to him last, and it just sounded like he was like, we learned from the last time, and what to do, what not to do, and how to really keep the excitement going, as opposed to, here's everything we've got.
Yeah,
and
now go
that
bid.
Was everything we have, and it's still there. And
well, not only that, but Andrew learned that they actually shot too low.
Yeah,
and that they didn't end up making any money on the album.
Yeah,
because it cost them more to send out all the prizes and everything like that than they had anticipated. So they had to kind of rework their structure in that regard in order to actually make it work to where they could make money on it. I mean, that's why they do what they do. They do it because they love it, but I mean, it's their business. This is their livelihood. This is what puts food on their tables.
Right.
So, it made it a lot more. It was a lot more interesting talking to Andrew about that process long after it had been completed, and hearing the things that he had learned along the way and how differently they did this campaign, I think, is a direct reflection of all of that stuff that they figured out.
Yeah.
So that's good. Kirk in the chat room is telling us that apparently Jars of Clay hit their goal on their campaign.
Surprise.
So, yeah. Jars is one of those bands that you would assume they probably didn't have to promote it much, that they have just a ton of fans out there. Okay. Another group that we have heard that is doing a crowdfunding campaign is the band Disciple.
Right, which is crazy because, I mean, they were on Fair Trade Services. I'd never heard anything bad about the relationship. It seemed like they had a good mutual working relationship, and I don't know if the last album didn't do as well as they wanted it to, or maybe their contract was up and they were like, we can do this on our own now, or maybe there were some creative differences. I mean, it's just hard to tell because you never know what's going on behind the scenes unless someone actually tells you who's had direct interactions.
And then you have to be careful with some of those stories because you don't want it to end up being gossip.
Right, exactly. So, I mean, there's just no way of knowing. So, I don't know. I'm very curious to see what this next record will sound like, because the last time they decided to go independent, I guess last time they were independent, it wasn't really a choice. I mean, they just all of a sudden didn't have a contract anymore. Their label went under, and they're like, okay, well, if we're going to make a record, we need to do it on our own, because they were far less known then than they are now. But they proceeded to put out one of the heaviest records they had ever done. So I'm hoping that will be the outcome for this one as well.
Right. No, I know that we have dealt with Fair Trade a number of times in the past, and just trying to set up interviews, and they're great people over there. Oh, yeah. But we also know, you and I both know that the landscape is shifting as far as what bands are capable of doing on their own, and a lot of bands are going on their own to make the album so they can make it the way they want it. But then sometimes they'll even go through and use a label strictly for the distribution side of things. Right. So it's completely possible that that's what we'll end up seeing, is that distribution side, that maybe Fair Trade will get a crack at launching the album, sending it out to people, taking care of all of that kind of thing. We won't know until it happens.
Yeah, because they don't tend to leak that information.
Yeah, exactly. There's no reason really for them to say that now, because why worry about that deal at this particular moment when you're focused on trying to get the fundraising done for the album? They stand a chance at making more money by doing it independently, providing that they're smart with how they do it, i.e. look at Project 86's example and kind of learn from those mistakes that you see.
Yeah, exactly. And they're already at $34,062, and they're only trying to make it to $45,000, and they launched this week.
Yeah.
And they still got 30 days left to go. So I dare say I would be willing to guess that they'll hit the $60,000 mark easy.
Yeah, I would think that that's not going to be too much of a difficult stretch.
Although, based on their new picture, I think they should change the name of the band, though.
Oh, is that right?
I think they should change the band name now to Black Skinny Jeans and Dirty Black Shoes. That's what I think they need to change it to. I think it would be just revolutionary, turn the world on its head, because that's what they're all wearing.
Oh, that's funny. The image of Kevin's face that I have seen almost looks scary. You know? Yeah, well, they kind of like zoom in, and he's got almost no expression on his face. It's just really intense, and I don't know. It leaves me a little bit unnerved when I when I take a look at it. So
right. Oh, by the way, I've got a conspiracy theory for you.
Okay.
I think that Kevin has a side project that he does under an assumed name, but he hasn't admitted to it yet.
Oh, really?
The reason why I think this is because I got a phone call from one Wendell Birdsong from the Bird Songs, and he sounds exactly like Kevin on the phone.
Oh.
Because I answer the phone, he's like, "Hey, is this Paul Gibson?" Yeah, I mean, when I do it, it obviously sounds like Bill Clinton, but that is really the way he sounds. But I was like, "Yeah." He goes, "Hi, this is Wendell Birdsong. How are you doing today?" I'm just going, Kevin, are you joking me? You know,
yeah.
But anyway, it's funny because they sound very similar, and of course now the Bird Songs are ironically enough in Tennessee.
Yeah.
Oh. Who really has a real name like Wendell and the last name Birdsong? I mean,
right.
Come on. I mean, this.
Well, there's a guy who is he listens to Broken FM, and he's not related to them in any way, at least that I know of. But his name is Mike Birdsong.
Oh, nice.
So that's interesting little tidbit. If you are a fan of the harder side of music, such as metal, Face Down Records is doing an online sale right now at merchnow.com. Huge sale going on, Face Down Records merchandise and music. It hasn't been mentioned on their website, so it may be their distribution agency rather than the label itself that's doing it. Right. But there are a bunch of releases that are only $5. Onward to Olympus, My Epic, loads and loads of things. Let me see what else here. In the Midst of Lions, Dynasty, Altar, Sleeping Giant, Plea for Purging, and so much more. So you go to merchnow.com, and you can check that out and see if there's anything there that you are interested in getting your hands on.
And also, if you're in a mood for merchy bargains, the Letter Black, I think, is doing until I think the day after Easter.
Okay.
I think they're doing a 50% off everything in their store.
Cool.
Yeah, so you can just check out their Facebook page for info on that. I think you have to enter in a code, but still pretty nifty. And also, if you're a big metal kind of fan, this band was so much of a bigger deal, I felt like, before they got signed to Solid State. And then it was like they disappeared as soon as their album came out. But I got to see them once. But the band Gwen Stacy is doing a Indiegogo campaign to raise funds to play a one-time show.
Oh.
I think that's a little strange, but it's okay. But I don't know where the show is, but it's going to be on June 14th. But I'm sure all that info is on their Indiegogo campaign. But anyway, I don't know. I mean, I wasn't hugely impressed with him when I saw him live. I mean, they were kind of one of those, we scream, we sing, we do all those kinds of things. But, I mean, it wasn't bad. It just,
right.
I don't know. I don't know. But anyway,
yeah.
So they're raising money to do that. So
probably the one bit of news that Paul is most excited about this week is that the band Plus One has reunited.
Yeah! The original Christian boy band.
That's right. That's right. The NSYNC of Christian music.
Yeah. Although, I don't know if it was their second or their third album, actually had a bit of rock roots to it, which wasn't bad. But yeah. I think that they're definitely going back to the soccer moms of old and kind of recapturing more of their older sound than the newer sound. They put out a new single, which I thought about chopping up and having a clip for, but then I was like, you know what? We want people to listen to this podcast.
Yes.
And then I rethought it. So.
Exactly. And speaking of disappointments, our friend Kirk is very disappointed at Cutlass's new album. He said that it's more along the lines of a Chris Tomlin type feel. Than it seems to be of a normal Cutlass kind of rock pop kind of feel. So
Cutlass making Christian soccer moms thinking they like Christian rock.
That's right.
2002.
Yeah, man, I'm a rocker. I listen to Cutlass all the time.
Strong Tower's my jam.
Woohoo!
I have guy friends who are like that too, and I just look at them dead in the eye. I'm like, no, you don't like Christian rock.
Yeah,
I do. Cutlass is my jam. I'm like, no.
That's not. Not even.
You have been misinformed. A bill of goods you have been sold, my friend. A bill of goods.
Let's see. The band Citizens from Mars Hill have released a new single. I have not heard it yet, but it's called You Brought Me Back to Life. Right. So we will have to take a look and see. Apparently, they have a new release that they're working on as far as an album is concerned. So,
which is pretty cool.
Coming soon. Definitely enjoyed their music. Made Alive's a great song. We played it long on, well, it's still in rotation, but I think it's medium or cold rotation right now. So it doesn't get played as often. But, you know, it's still good. Now, this is an aspect of road life that we hear all too often.
Yeah.
And it's very, very unfortunate when we do. It's happened to The Wedding. It's happened to, I can't think of it. Yeah, Fireflight. Happened to Fireflight, exactly. And this is robberies. Apparently, the band Leaders, they were recently robbed while they were in Nashville, and someone stole all of their guitars.
Wow.
So they are doing a campaign, a fundraising campaign through youcaring.com to try and replace the missing guitars. So they have $1,503 raised of the $4,000 that they need. What I would love to see is not necessarily, I mean, I'd love to see people going and funding this. That would be fantastic. But I'd almost rather see whoever the guitar manufacturers are stepping up and just maybe giving them a few guitars to be able to get themselves going again.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's a huge van and let me see. Our van got broken into last night. They stole all of our guitars, 4 total, smashed the passengers' windows, and trashed our belongings. So if you could help us with any money to help us get back home and get our window fixed as well as new guitars, we'd greatly appreciate it. Thank you guys so much. So that is youcaring.com.
Not to speak ill of my home state, but more often than not, when I hear of bands getting their vehicles broken into or their trailer stolen with all their gear in it, it's in San Antonio, Texas. So,
is that right?
Yeah. So be careful of where you stay and where you park. You know, I have a little bit of this when I travel, but, you know, park underneath a light, park near an entrance to something where there's going to be a lot of traffic from people that are going to notice these things. But yeah, if you're going to San Antonio, please be careful.
Yeah.
I mean, every other time when I hear, oh, we got our bus broken into, I'm like, where was it? Oh, San Antonio. I'm like, dang. What's going on down in San Antonio? So I don't know. Maybe it just seems like it's more, but that just stinks, though. I mean, it's like, you know, and I think to a lot of people it can come off as frivolous, but I mean, it's like if you're a carpenter and someone steals all your saws, all your hammers, all your drills, you got nothing. I mean, there's nothing you can do with that. And the same thing with bands. So,
well, now I will say the one thing, like with a carpenter, typically he's got insurance on that stuff.
Right.
Most bands can't afford the extra money that it costs per month to insure their gear. So it's, you know, I mean, while it's tragic on both sides, it almost feels like it's more of a tragedy for a band because, you know, that's going to be a lot more difficult for them to be able to recoup their losses than someone who's in a different line of work like that. So,
well, that, you know, and also you have to think about the fact that the people who, especially Christian metal bands, are catering to, the audience that they are going after, are not the people who are just rolling in dough. You know, it's just not there. So
yeah, exactly.
It's difficult.
Exactly. Let me see. Last bit of news that I can think of. Wolves at the Gate has an acoustic video performance of their track Dead Man. So you can go find that at indievisionmusic.com. You can check that out. And they have a new album coming out this summer. So new music from Wolves at the Gate. That should be interesting.
Woo-hoo. Yeah, no kidding. Well, I've got a couple of pieces of news I'm going to throw in there at the last minute.
Go
this
right
one
ahead.
Is so much of a teaser. It's almost wrong. I so am anxious to hear what this will sound like. But apparently there's a new side project coming up consisting of Ryan Clark of Demon Hunter and Randy Torres, the former guitarist from Project 86.
Yeah, Tim was telling me about this the other day, so
Yeah.
it definitely sounds interesting.
Apparently it looks like they're going to be called Envious, which is spelled Yes. So yeah, I don't know. But I would assume that's pronounced Envious.
The Twitter generation.
Yeah. So so that'll be fun. I'm just super stoked about that. The other thing is kind of a follow up to other stories that we've been doing on the As I Lay Dying members that are surviving and not being in jail. We had talked a little bit about the whole letter writing thing. That was a whole big mess. We're not going to go through that again because that was way confusing.
Yeah, go back and listen to the previous episode.
Right. Go listen to that if you don't know what we're talking about. But anyway, they have announced the band officially now that it kind of pretty much got leapt out of the bag anyway. But they're not going to be called Worshipper. They're called Woven War.
Okay.
And it's one word. Once again, not a Christian band because apparently none of the members consider themselves that anymore. It will consist of the surviving members of As I Lay Dying with Shane Clay of O Sleeper, who has said he's not leaving O Sleeper by any means at all. But that they're going to be releasing a full-length record. Woven War will be later this year on Metal Blade, and that's about it.
So is O Sleeper still considered a Christian band then?
I don't know. You can't really tell. I mean, I would assume so because that is so ingrained into even down to their logo is like a broken pentagram. I mean, it's like I don't think that they as a band consider themselves to not be of faith anymore.
But if the lead singer's not, and he's the one...
not the lead singer.
Oh, he's not?
No, he's the guitarist.
Okay. All right. Different idea
he is
then.
one of the founding members.
Okay.
So, I mean, he is one of the ones who's been around, obviously, the longest in the band. But, yeah, he's not the vocalist. So the vocalist is really, really tall and lanky and long hair and creepy looking.
See, this is what I get because I don't listen to O Sleeper. So these are the things that I don't know about the band.
Right. Well, that's okay, though. That's okay. No one's going to harp on you about that, except for me after we get off the air.
Exactly. I
That's
will.
how I do. I'm brave like that.
I will be taken to task, just not in front of everyone else.
Right. No, the other thing is Tooth and Nail has signed yet another band. They just seem to be on a signing frenzy lately. They get out from underneath EMI, and now all of a sudden they're like, "Oh, there's a band. Let's sign them."
Well, isn't that what put them underneath EMI as a label?
I don't even know. I mean, it's kind of weird, but I'm not really sure that I really dig the new band that they signed. They're not bad.
Oh, why don't you play a clip and we'll let our listeners decide whether they want to support the band or not.
Okay, we'll do that. All right, so here you go. The band is called Midnight Alive. Evidently, they are from Detroit, Michigan, and the song is called Forever. Here we go.
When we first began, we'll still be together. We'll still be together. Friday nights were meant to live in until we had enough. Nights like these, I know I won't forget. There's no place I'd rather be instead. In this moment, the world can't touch us.
Okay, what you just heard is the best part of the song. It kind of goes downhill from there. For whatever reason, like the last minute of it is basically just the lead singer going, "Forever and ever, ever and ever."
Would you like my opinion?
Ever. Yeah, sure, go for it.
Not good.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, the little chorus part of there is kind of catchy, and and it was weird because while I was listening to it for the first time, I was kind of jamming to the chorus a little bit. I was like, okay, I can kind of see this, and then it was like forever and ever, ever and ever, and I'm just going. But it's weird though. It doesn't sound. It sounds like they did one take on that part of the vocals, and they spent all their time on the chorus because the rest of it just doesn't. It doesn't sound right. I mean, you have to find a weird balance. I mean, I'm all for having stuff that's raw and unproduced enough to where, you hear the voice crack every now and then. It kind of feels real. I get that. It either needs to be on that end of things or it needs to be on the really slick end of things. This felt like it was somewhere in between.
Right.
And I don't know. I'm curious to hear what the rest of it sounds like. I think they have possibilities, but I don't know. It's strange. You usually think of Tooth and Nail signing bands that already have a little bit of a following. This is something that's been pointed out a lot on Indie Vision Music is a lot of people are like, how in the world did they think that this was a good idea? They have like 200 followers on Facebook.
Yeah.
They're like, I have more friends on Facebook than this band does. And it's like, no one seems to know who these guys are. And all of a sudden, they're going to have a new EP on Tooth and Nail. And this is going to seem so wrong. But the other thing that's odd about it is they have a picture of the two guys who evidently are the main members of the band. One of them looks kind of old to be in a band that's just starting up.
All right.
Maybe that's wrong. I don't know. But I mean, he looks like a youth minister. He's been a youth minister for a long time to me. Maybe that's wrong.
Yeah.
I don't know. And I'm sure he's a nice guy. I'm not trying to dog on either one of them, but it just feels like an odd set of circumstances for Tooth and Nail to be going after these guys. It's like they don't have much of a following yet. The song is okay. It doesn't, and it seems like if anything else, it feels like more of a BEC release than it does a Tooth and Nail release.
Yeah. Oh, I hear you. Kirk in the chat room says no to that track.
Yeah.
Not so good. So, any other news stuff, Paul, that we need to bash on? Any other bands that we can rip asunder?
I'm sure there are plenty, but we won't
but
go
not
there.
today.
I don't know. I mean, did you want to talk about the new Southbound Fearing bit?
Yeah. No, that's fine. Paul and I each got an email from Brady, who is in the band Southbound Fearing, and they sent us their new single that we're going to start airing. I think this weekend is when it's going to hit, and they have a new album that is coming out on the 6th of May. That they are very excited about, and we're going to actually do an interview with them in a couple of weeks. And talk to them about the new album that they're releasing. So we decided, hey, we'll go ahead and share the part of the single on this podcast. Now, when Paul and I were listening to it today, we're like, man, that sounds like somebody, but who? It's very different. Well, okay. Let me just play it for you, and then we'll talk about kind of who we think it sounds a little bit like from Mainstream Land. Mainstream Land.
Now there is a band name for you. I like that.
We'll talk about what mainstream artists they kind of sounded like to us a little bit. But here's a clip. It's called "Easy Way Out." It is by Southbound Fearing.
Well, but don't call me a charlatan. I never claimed to be anything more than what I am. We're just the ones who won't back down, the ones who won't run away from the proving ground. There ain't no easy way out. You want the world, but you don't want the pain. No, there ain't no easy way out. There ain't no easy way out. You want it all, but you don't want to lead the way. There ain't no easy way out. There ain't nothing.
So that is, like we said, "Easy Way Out" by Southbound Fearing, and it sounded at first a little bit to me like Jane's Addiction.
Yeah, very much so.
So it's going to be interesting to see if that's what the whole album is kind of like, or if that's just one take on a particular song. That kind of stuff we don't really know. So we have to wait and see what happens. But it'll be interesting to talk to Brady and see. But that's a new clip from Southbound Fearing. It's about to hit the airwaves. Did you get it in time to include it in your show this week, Paul? Or
yeah, it is. It is
Okay.
one of the featured new tracks on the show this week. So
Good
if you
deal.
want to hear it, you can catch it on the Christian Ride 20. But I like it, but it
yeah.
doesn't even sound like Brady anymore.
Yeah, it was very different. Very different. Kirk says kind of like The Cure. I never listened to The Cure much, so I can't speak to that. But
that isn't how it struck me, Kirk. But at the same time, different things strike people in totally different ways.
Absolutely.
I know I throw out some stuff like, "Oh, it sounds kind of like this," and everyone I know looks at me and goes, "You're stupid." It sounds nothing
like what? So, all right. Well, we got a new review from Tom. Oh, he says, "Just kidding."
That nice save, Kirk.
It sounds like The Cure. It doesn't sound anything like The Cure. Yeah, you're right. I was just joking. We got a new review from Tom, so let's check that out.
Now here's something we hope you'll really like.
In a hard place. Music. The Peter Furler Band, Sun and Shield.
I lift up my eyes, turn to the sun. This is where my health's coming from. It
Since Peter Furler dropped the drumsticks and took over lead vocal duty of the Newsboys in the mid-90s, he's made an undeniable dent in the Christian music industry. The writer of 27 number-one radio singles has done it all, from making listeners smile and shake their heads to leading thousands in falling on their knees in adoration to their creator. Following up his 2011 solo release, On Fire, under the moniker Furler, Sun and Shield is the second release since leaving the Newsboys in 2009. But this time he's recruited some well-abled soldiers, bassist Dave Kazarian and drummer Jeff Irizarry, and formed the Peter Furler Band. Furler also rejoined longtime producer and lyricist Steve Taylor to help flow some creative juices. With 10 tracks totaling just over a half hour, Sun and Shield features a good variety of songs from serious and heartfelt to, well, the kind that make your eyebrows furrow and head kick back a bit. What do I mean? On the serious and heartfelt side of the spectrum, we have the song Yeshua, an extremely accessible worship song that features Peter's father-in-law and longtime Christian artist, Mylon Lefevre. Yeshua takes you by the hand and ushers you next to Isaiah as you sing along with the angels, Holy, Holy, Holy. On the furrowed eyebrows side, we have Right Wrong Girl. It's a bit of a sore thumb track on the album, but only if you don't get the greater Furler context. With its unconventional lyrics, this slightly romantic number fits right in the wheelhouse of classic Furler comedy. The song that stands out the most to me is the title track, Sun and Shield. With radio hit written all over it, Sun and Shield is both bouncy and fun, and yet at the same time, very anthemic. Encouraging all members of the Army of God to drop their idols and go deeper, Furler recites on the hook, I lift up my eyes, turn to the sun, this is where my help's coming from. In the heights or the battle, my sun, my shield. The Peter Furler Band have created the perfect record for fans of the mid-90s to mid-2000s Newsboys. But I will say, in my opinion, it might be a challenge to gain new, younger fans with this album. That's only because this album has a very, shall you say, nostalgic feel. Sun and Shield can be categorized as a reversion back to the old Newsboys sound that no doubt Peter Furler has been begged to return to. When I say it feels nostalgic, that's not a negative thing. We're talking about Peter Furler, the man with a couple decades of rocking the Christian music scene under his belt. This new album is chock full of what made Peter and the Newsboys a mainstay back in the day, and like I said, fans from the glory days will no doubt revel in this record. All in all, the Australian Christian rocker, along with his new band of brothers, have done it again. Sun and Shield is a mature project and clearly a job well done by a veteran with a ton of accomplishments. I give Sun and Shield by the Peter Furler Band 4 rocks out of 5. For the Rockin' a Hard Place podcast, I'm Tom Labonte.
Thank you very much, Tom. Appreciate that. If you want more information on Tom Labonte, he is the host of The Edge on UCB Canada. You can check him out at ucbcanada.com or rockfortherock.net.
Yeah.
I haven't heard the new Peter Furler album, so...
Yeah, I haven't either. And actually, I was hoping to get him on to talk about it because we had him on when On Fire came out, and I thought that was a decent record, too. So... I don't know. I mean, it'll be interesting, and I dare say there probably won't be a single push towards the Christian rock side just because. But I don't know. I like Peter. I think he's always got an interesting outlook on things, and of course, the fact that he works with Steve Taylor quite often doesn't hurt things in my book at all.
Yeah.
So
Kirk says that he liked the Furler album way better than he liked the last Newsboys album. So.
Yeah, well, that's just a whole other story now, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, today we wanted to talk about kind of the live concert experience and maybe relay some stories from our most memorable shows or our favorite shows that we've had an opportunity to go to. I don't know what it is about a live concert that is just amazing, provided that the artist does a good job of representing themselves at the show.
Yeah.
That's kind of a key component. You know, it's like if I go to a festival and there's a band that is interested in their music being played on Broken FM, and I go watch them play live and they cannot do a live show, odds are I'm not even going to bother to listen to the album.
Right. Yeah.
Cold as that may sound, it's just like, yeah, you should have your live stuff down before you start worrying about recording an album.
Right.
Because the live stuff is where you get your practice, in my opinion.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Oh, yeah.
So, Paul, who have you seen?
That's kind of a broad question. I wasn't expecting it to be that broad. Well, let me put it this way. I will relay some of my earliest good concert memories. And I wish I was older, honestly, when these had occurred, because I think I would remember them better.
Yeah.
Because they were so young. But I think some of my earliest fun concert memories were seeing DC Talk open up for Michael W. Smith. I thought that was really fun back in the New Thing days. I thought that was really cool.
You know what? You and I probably saw that same tour, just in different cities.
Nice. Now, was Mike E on that tour too?
No.
Do you remember Mike E?
I do, but he was not on that tour.
Oh, that's unfortunate. Yeah, he was when I saw him, and he played. I think he played guitar in Michael W. Smith's band, but he like opened for everybody, I think.
Okay.
Or maybe, well, no, that was when I don't remember.
It gets so muddy, I know.
It does.
I know.
It does. But yeah, I mean, that was a really good early memory, and then subsequently seeing them on both the Jesus Freak tour and the Supernatural tour were both just amazing overall experiences, just because of how much fun they were. And of course, that was back in the day when Audio Adrenaline opened for them on every tour, because it made sense, and because it isn't like Toby married to Mark's sister or something like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
At least, Mark
Mark
was, I believe, married to Toby's sister.
Oh, okay.
Because Toby married a woman from Jamaica.
Oh, yeah, that's right. So yeah, it would be the other way around.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that, it kind of turned it into a big family affair kind of a thing, which is always good. But, I think that was cool, and I really enjoyed that. I think Kirk's asking what was the first Christian concert. I think the first Christian concert I can remember going to was Leon Patillo, and that was just not fun for me. Back in the day, that was just really boring. And, back in those days, I also went to go see, who was it? I mean, I think I went to go see maybe John Michael Talbot and a couple of other people who were just like really mellow. No, it wasn't John Michael Talbot. It was some other people from that ilk of just really, really mellow, kind of folksy, contemporary kind of stuff. And that I just was going along with either my parents or my brother to go see because they really liked it. And it was all right. I went to go see, I think Billy Sprague at one point, and that was kind of fun.
Okay.
And, there were some good experiences like that, but the first real rock concerts were probably the DC Talk show, and then somewhat in that same era, before I started going to concerts on my own, we saw Steve Taylor perform with Guardian and Hoi Polloi. That was a great show.
That would be a good show, yeah.
Although, wait a minute, no, that was actually Steve Taylor, Hocus Pick, and Guardian. But then I saw Hoi Polloi open for Guardian, and that was despite the fact that apparently Jamie's voice was just completely just strepped out, and he had basically no voice. That was still a very fun show. And
Hocus Pick. Now that's a band I haven't heard of in a long time.
Right, and that was right at the big, to me, what struck me as the peak of their career, and I think that they got a lot of juice off of the Snappy song.
Yes.
But I didn't remember that song being a big deal at all. To me, they kind of fell off after their second album, but this was right after Brothers from Different Mothers came out, so we got to see them perform I Hate This Love Stuff and, all that good stuff. And
they did a show here in town at a really small venue. And, there was maybe 50 people at the show, and they came down. They were the only band. They didn't even have an opener. It was just them, like some church group or something paid to have them come and play. And I got to talk to the guys in the band afterwards, and they were all super nice guys. It really surprised me that they disappeared as quick as they did, but they suddenly just kind of left relevance all of a sudden. It's just gone.
Yeah. And I think that was, to me, that was the problem, was I think that they had a much better staying power before they hit their fourth and fifth album and subsequent records, if there were. I mean, to me, they got to where they were just too poppy, and they didn't have that groundwork laid to where that's what they always were.
Yeah.
To where they could, maintain like something like the Newsboys or something. And plus, they never were big enough to really capture on that. But I thought that their Brothers from Different Mothers record was really good, and it was very different, but it was still rocking. And I think after that, and then Book of Boom, which I think was their third record, I think they just decided that they were going to be really, really sugary sweet pop. And aside from the Snappy song, I think everyone else was just kind of like, they're not really what I remember. And then everyone else like, oh, I've heard them before. I know what they sound like, and I don't like it, even though they might have liked them at that point. So I think it was just a bad sound change for them that really killed it.
Yeah, so they did a Greatest Of in 98, and they did a Super Duper in 99, and then they just kind of disappeared after that.
Yeah.
Let me see. I'm looking at their Wikipedia, and it says that rumors abounded that Hocus Pick was planning to come back into music after having been spotted in a secluded warehouse jamming together. Filmmaking company Transportation Films, composed of legendary members itself, avoided questions regarding their involvement in filming a documentary about the process.
Okay, I can tell you what that is. When we were still doing the Christian Music Archive, I went through all of that mess, and it turns out that whole thing was just a shtick where they made a fake documentary to show at like basically the Canadian Dove Awards.
Oh,
and, they got like an achievement award of some sort.
Yeah,
kind of like the Old Timers Award or whatever the case would be, and they showed the film that they made. At that award ceremony, and I think they played like 2 or 3 songs or something. They may have played a full set, but I mean, the whole thing was kind of built around them. So yeah, they never really got back together. They just played a show, but they all moved on to other things. But yeah, it was so goofy.
Very cool. Yeah, no, I have fond memories of Hocus Pick. I mean, I wasn't like a mega fan by any means, but I enjoyed. My aunt is is kind of an Eeyore.
Oh.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so she's a bit of an Eeyore. So the ringtone that I have on my phone when she calls is Hocus Pick's Snappy. So
that's just wrong. Funny,
it's wrong and funny on many levels. All of all of the above. Let me see if I can pull it up, because I don't know how many people remember Snappy.
Yeah. And see, that's what was funny for me. And it was probably because it came out in a time where I was either too cool for the Christian rock show, or maybe the DJ just didn't do it for me anymore, or maybe I just had enough of my own stuff to where I didn't care. But that song hit in a weird spot for me to where I didn't know it was a big deal until way after it was over. And I was like, really? That song was a big deal? And
yeah. Here, let me I grabbed my ringtone. Let me play it real quick.
Okay.
I'm so happy, feeling snappy. My life is rosy. I'm feeling cozy.
Now, half our audience is probably up dancing around right now, because I mean, it's a catchy tune.
Yeah. And it is, but I think that kind of fed into the idea of style changes all over.
Yeah, most definitely. Because
it felt like every 2 albums they just made just a big left turn, and you were just constantly wondering where they were going to go with it. Because that's a very much kind of a ska feeling song, and the one before that was kind of like almost like rockabilly in some ways.
Yeah, they were definitely. I mean, they called themselves pop rock, but they were more widespread than that in their style. They did not stick to any one particular style. And honestly, I think bands that do that have such a much harder time of garnering that audience. It's like the radio station that plays country mixed with rock mixed with hip hop. It's like there's nothing there really to hold any one person for a great length of time, because you've got the rock guys that when it's a country song they're going to flip the channel, or the hip hop guys that when it's a rock or country song they're going to flip the channel. You can't be too eclectic with your styles, because then you don't adhere to any one particular audience really well, and you got no reason for people to stick with you.
Yeah, for sure. So now, what was your first like memorable concert experiences?
Well, I saw DC Talk probably 25 times when they would come through. So,
Right.
they're the ones that I remember the most. My first concert was I was probably in my 20s and went to one of the Christian music days they had at what used to be called Marriott's Great America down in Santa Clara, California. I would go see, I've seen like Michael W. Smith play there, DC Talk. I saw Petra there a few times. Saw a couple of rap groups, SFC, Soldiers for Christ. They played down there and always enjoyed seeing them. All of them kind of blur together. I don't remember what year each one played. I know I saw the OC Supertones down there, and they were a lot of fun.
Oh yeah.
Watching those guys play. So I had an opportunity to see them live.
Now, here's a question for you. Was that the tour when they had a DJ who busted out the Jar Jar Binks mask?
Not that I remember.
Okay, had to ask. All right,
Yeah.
continue.
Yeah, not that I remember. So, I've gotten to see a lot of, it's easier to tell you what my first mainstream concert was than to tell you what my first Christian concert was.
Okay, what was your first mainstream one?
Alice Cooper just this last year.
That would definitely be easy to remember. I'm with you there.
Yeah, that was my first mainstream show that I'd ever been to was Alice Cooper. So,
You want to know what my first mainstream show was?
sure.
Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo, seeing a bunch of country artists.
I am very sorry that I now have that information in my brain.
I got to see Roger Miller, which is really random information to have because my dad's a huge Roger Miller fan. I don't think he ever got to see him live, and he's dead now. So
Yeah.
I don't remember who else played. I kept on asking my friends, is it going to be the person who sings I Got Friends in Low Place? They're like, no, that's Garth Brooks. He's not playing. And I think it was like George Strait or something. It was one of those people who was huge at the same time, but I was like, oh, okay. Well, I don't know who that is, but okay.
Yeah, I made a comment the other day. I had to do sound for an auction, and it was a barn raising theme. So of course it was all country, and they asked me to DJ, and I said, well, that's fine. I'll volunteer my services, no problem. But I said I don't own any, nor do I know anything about country music.
Right.
So someone else is going to have to choose the tunes that are played that night.
Right.
So 3 days before the show, I was emailed this list of songs and told, go buy them on iTunes and then, let us know what we owe you for them and we'll reimburse you for it. And so everybody loved it. They said, oh, you did such a great job. Nice choices in the music and stuff. And I'm like, dude, look, I was just the button pusher tonight. I didn't mix anything. I didn't choose anything. I just sat here and pressed play. So, it was just, music, country has never, ever been my thing. So that's kind of how that rolls. Now, so I can't really say what my first one was, Paul, but what do you think would be your most memorable? Like, do you have a favorite show?
I have a couple that would fall into that category for me. One, I think I've mentioned before, and it was just such a ridiculous show, but it was so good. But it was Stave Zaker opening for Living Sacrifice, who was then opening for Project 86. And it was in this kind of corner coffee shop that was pretty big, but it didn't look like it was going to be big. The one downside of the show was the fact that there was next to no ventilation in this building. So it was just
it seems that it's that way in every concert I go to, especially if you spend any time in the pit. It's like, does this building not have air conditioning?
No, this did not for this amount of people anyway, because it was packed, and it was like there was a haze of mist that was nothing but sweat that had evaporated.
Yeah,
and one of the most memorable moments there were two very memorable moments from that show. Number one was Lance, the drummer for Living Sacrifice, opened up their show because with the lights completely off, then all of a sudden you just see this little flame coming up out of the darkness, and you realize that he has a radial saw blade attached to his drum set, like where a cymbal would be, and he has doused it with lighter fluid, and it's burning, and all you can see is two glowing eyes sitting behind this drum, set, and he's got a black bandana covering the bottom half of his face, and then a black baseball cap over the top. So all you can see is the eyes, and then you just start to see these drumsticks just whirling around, and they play the intro to I think the song Reborn, and it's just this nice little 3-minute long intro. And it was insanely intense in that room. And it was just so theatrical and very cool. And then, of course, they started, the guitars hit and everything, and the pit erupted. It was beautiful. And then, there was also some other great moments, like it was back when Drawing Black Lines was still new. So they played all the really good songs off of that for Project 86. They played Chimes, which is one of my favorite songs from them. And that was really cool. And I had to leave during Stime's theme because I was just about to Ralph, because it was so thick with sweat. It was like being in a sauna for about 3 hours. So I ended up leaving during the second half of that song, and I was just out there till it ended. But that was a really cool memory. Probably one of the other ones in the midst of a myriad of ones was Family Force 5 when they were touring on I believe it was the Heart Support Tour. They came through Abilene, and as it is in a small town, the mainstream station got to promote the Christian concert because it was one of the only big things going on, and the Christian stations that were there at the time really weren't equipped to do anything with it. So I got to introduce Family Force 5, and I was desperately trying to memorize their stage names before I went up on stage, and I had to hunt around for them forever to find them backstage because it was like the first date on their tour, and no one knew their real names. At all, or their stage names, because I was like, hey, I'm looking for Crouton, and I think I ran into the guys from Falling Up and from Hawk Nelson. I think they were all together on that tour, if I remember correctly, and all of them just kind of looked at me like, you're looking for who? Chapstick? And they're like, you're looking for Chapstick. I'm like, Derek from Family Force 5? They're like, look, we just met them tonight. I don't know any of their names. They're around somewhere. I was like, okay. But the great thing about this tour was they had these custom-made shirts that were black and then had these hearts on the front. They were like a bunch of hearts within hearts, kind of like a Russian stacking dolls or nesting dolls or whatever.
Yeah.
But they were hearts. And then when they came out in the dark. See, are you noticing a theme here?
Yep.
And then all of a sudden you see these hearts all come alive on the stage, and they were like they were like a neon sign that you would imagine. I mean, it was like the one on the outside would go, and then the one on the inside would go, and they would just, either get bigger or smaller or whatever the case would be, but it alternated. Mm-hmm. And it was really cool looking. And they put on a great show. They were kind of maybe a little on the spastic side, but you kind of figure that for a band like Family Force 5. And that was my first time seeing them live, and it was awesome. Then afterwards, we went up and had a video camera, and we did like a little backstage interview thing with them. And I was like, that was a great show. They're like, oh, that was terrible. I got to get the shirt up. I'm like, why? Those shirts were awesome. They're like, yeah, but the wires weren't insulated as well as they should have been, and we sweat, and so we were getting shocked all the time. And I think a couple of the shirts had shorted out on their body, so some of them didn't work the whole way through. And they were like, yeah, we don't normally spaz out quite that much, but these things are connected to 9 volts, so we kept on getting juiced over and over again, and it was so hilarious.
That's a great story, dude. That's awesome.
And you can actually find still on YouTube clips of me talking with them on there. And that was just an awesome show, and just really, really fun and whatnot. And, other memorable experiences, include, pretty much anyone that was big and heavy around that time. We would drive in from Abilene to Dallas, to catch shows all the time, especially metal shows. And that was just, it was a lot. It was a fun time in life to where you had nothing better to do than to drive 3 hours to see a show just because. Yeah. But yeah, good stuff for sure.
Fantastic. I'm reading what Kirk is writing in the chat room, and he said his first concert was Audio Adrenaline on the Bloom tour, which Bloom was a great album, by the way.
That's my favorite record there.
With Bleach and Johnny Q. Public. Johnny Q. Public is a band I have not heard in forever also.
Right.
And then he says one of his best is the Five Iron Frenzy Farewell tour at Rocket Town. And he said Reese Roper ripped the crotch out of his pants doing breakdance moves.
That's something I didn't want to visualize.
So that's a good deal. A good deal. What is my favorite? I don't know. I mean, seeing Skillet play at the Phoenix Theater here in Petaluma to a packed house, I had a much better... I had a much better seat, if you will, than everybody else did because I had the ability to go backstage, but I was also working security, and I was between the stage and the barricade. So, like, I was right at the foot of the stage, and there was probably a 2-foot gap between me and the crowd and this barricade that was there. So I got to turn and watch the show, basically staring straight up at Ben and John as they were moving across the stage. And then I could turn the other way and see what was going on with the crowd, making sure that nobody was surfing and everybody was still having fun but not getting too crazy. So that was a lot of fun. You know, Skillet, not only do they put on just a wonderful show that is filled with eye candy, you know, and special effects and all that kind of stuff. They had these CO2 canisters that were going off because they couldn't do inside pyro. So they had to do CO2 canisters instead, which was phenomenal in and of itself, just seeing these things going off. But I mean, lights. But they went so far as to remove all of the gear that belonged to the venue. They like cleared it all, cleared the stage stacks. They cleared out the soundboard. They took everything into the back, and they brought all their own speakers, soundboard, monitors. All of that stuff came in with them, and it's the best I have ever heard that venue sound.
Oh, I bet so.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing. So I remember...
My experiences with Skillet are somewhat the same. I mean, you have to admire the amount of stage craft that's going on in there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, just so cool. And I mean, to me, them and the Newsboys are probably the best at putting on just a very interactive, crazy props and stuff that you just never quite expect, unless you've heard or watched YouTube videos ahead of time, which I would advise you not to do if you're going to see either of those bands for the first time, because you will just be in awe of the random stuff that will just all of a sudden happen, and you're just going, oh my goodness, they can do that.
Yeah, it's really cool. You know, and I mean, seeing the Newsboys in concert is also a spectacle. They'll usually have a stage piece that extends out into the crowd. Yeah. And I think when we saw them at Spirit West Coast, Michael actually dropped down on some kind of a... He had some kind of a thing that he had his hand into, and so he dropped down onto that portion of the stage. And then, of course, you got Duncan the drummer, who's on a kit that lifts up and comes out and rotates all around, and he can play upside down and everything like that. You know, so I mean, there's a lot of spectacle involved in those kind of shows, and it becomes the expectation that that's going to happen when you go see these guys. So then when they're playing a smaller venue where they can't do all this stuff, people leave, they're kind of like disappointed that it didn't happen the way that they wanted it to.
Right. Well, so the last time I saw the Newsboys was when they were touring off the Miracle album. Okay. And they played, it was like at a rodeo arena or something, but it was indoors, but the ceilings weren't quite high enough for them to be able to do everything. So they had the big like LED screens, but they didn't have enough to where it made a solid picture behind them. It was like they were just kind of scattered. So you could tell what they were going for, and you could tell that it was really awesome, you know, in your imagination if they had the full thing. But that was a little bit of a letdown, but at the same time, it was very cool. And then, of course, they had that weird kind of hydraulic lift that just went straight up that Michael ended up on. Yeah. It was kind of in the middle of the crowd, but you were almost wondering if it was going to squish him on the underside of the roof. Totally.
And then I have another show that is up there with one of my favorites, but it's a very small, intimate acoustic show. And it was with Jeremy Spring from a band in Kansas and Joey Vanucci from that just left me from Indian Lakes. That's exactly right. Thank you.
Welcome.
The two of them did what they called the living room tour, and this is something that Jeremy would normally do. I'm wondering if this is going to stop now that he's getting married. Yeah. You know, if this isn't going to happen anymore for him, but he would take time off from the band and he would just tour around on his own, usually around the holidays, November, December, January, that kind of stuff. He would go out, drive around, and he would play shows for a couple $100. He'd come play in your living room, and you could just have a few friends over, or he would do a larger presentation if that's what you wanted. So Broken FM paid for him to come with Joey to the studio, and we had this room that we used to have access to that was just a big empty storefront.
Right.
And the acoustics in it are terrible for most other things, but for this particular show, it actually was kind of a positive factor in that regard. So it was Joey and Jeremy on stools with their guitars, just in a room, no mics. We had the lights turned off. We just had some rope lighting and Christmas lighting on the floor to kind of give it an ambiance effect. And they came in and just blew us away with their vocal prowess. Jeremy would be singing an abandoned Kansas song to just him and acoustic guitar, and Joey would suddenly join in and just be harmonizing with him and playing some slightly off chords to really make the melody pop. I mean, just the talent of those two guys together in that room was one of my favorite shows that I've ever been to.
Nice. Very cool.
It was
now,
awesome.
What would you say makes a really good live show for you? I mean, I know a lot of people really like it when a band can reproduce basically an album sound on stage. A lot of other people dislike it when that happens and like it when, people will reimagine the song a little bit live.
Well, there's a frustration aspect, I think, for a lot of fans if a song is sung differently than on the album. Part of what fans go to a concert for is the performance, right. To be able to see how these guys can put on a show. But then there's also the aspect of, I know and love all of these songs and I want to be able to sing along.
Right.
If you change the song too much, tempo-wise or whatever, then it makes the audience, it's harder, I feel, for the audience to connect with that particular song because they're so used to hearing it the way that it is on the album.
Right.
So it's kind of a catch-22. You do it one way and you make somebody mad, you do it the other way and you make someone else mad. So I can't say that there's a right or a wrong way. My preference is to do it more just a live version of the album. I don't like a lot of change-ups. But there are some times where a couple of songs, maybe not some of their most popular ones, but some of their moderately popular ones, then you can kind of play around a little bit because you won't necessarily have as many people that are as into the song being performed the way that it is on the album.
Right.
So there's kind of this, I don't know, it's kind of a nuanced line for me in that. But I want high energy if it's going to be a high energy show. If I go to see Skillet, I'm expecting high energy. There's nothing else to expect. I don't see them sitting down and doing an acoustic style show. Now, they do have a violin and a cello that get played on stage, but it just kind of adds to the ambiance of everything that they're doing, and it's only for a couple of tracks that actually happens usually, or at least for the previous album.
Right. Yeah. And I'm with you there. You know who I think does a good job of towing that line, though? This is mainly just because of a recent experience that I'm thinking of these guys on this specifically. But I think Switchfoot did a great job on their most recent tour of being able to make songs different while still making them accessible.
Right.
Like they did, basically they did maybe a minute to a minute and a half of this very acoustic-driven, quirky version of Dark Horses.
Oh.
And then it kind of morphed, because I think when they started it out, they were all huddled around like one or two microphones, and Jerome was on an accordion, which is weird.
Yeah.
And, they have a couple of acoustic guitars, and then I think maybe their drummer may have had maybe just a tambourine or something just to add a little bit of percussion there. And it was really cool and vibey. And then, of course, it ended up that they all kind of ended up falling away one by one until it was just John. And then the guitars kicked in and they did, the plugged in version of it. And I was just going, wow, like they handled that so well. Because at first I was like, this is really cool, but I want to hear them rock out to this.
Right.
Like, but this is still really cool. And then when they went on to do it plugged in, I was like, that's the way you do it. This is a way that you can make all of that happen and it not be a disappointment, I think.
But see, then there's, if they were to do that with a song like Meant to Live, that is kind of such a beloved song, you could see some people potentially getting really annoyed that they changed it.
Yeah.
Because there's something about that guitar intro that everybody's like, oh, I know what this song is.
Yeah. It's about to go down up in this thing.
That's exactly right. I mean, I'm thankful that when I saw them a couple of years ago, we had to leave before their encore performance, unfortunately, but thankfully the last song that we heard them do, which I really wanted to hear them play live because I had not seen them before to hear them do it, and they did Meant to Live. And I was just like, oh, this sounds so good. It's one of those songs that I don't feel like you get tired of. You don't want to listen to it every day, but at the same time, when it comes on the radio, it's kind of like, oh, yeah, this feels good. It feels familiar. I'm okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Well, now this brings up another topic that I had meant to mention in the news section, but it works in well to what we're talking about. There's this new kind of trend going around, and I don't know if Switchfoot has done it, but I know a lot of other bands, both mainstream and Christian, have started latching onto this idea. And it's the idea, Switchfoot has done it, but it's the idea of doing a tour where you perform one of your albums, whether it be your newest one, a lot of times it's their first one or their most beloved, and they perform the entire album from front to back. Now, sometimes that's the whole show. Sometimes it's part of the show, but they will play in the correct order, just like you were listening to the CD. They'll play the whole thing front to back. And the reason why I thought of this is because Showbread is going to be doing their first album in Portland in August from front to back.
Okay.
And they're reuniting all the original members who I think only like maybe 2 of them or maybe 3 of the original 8 members that were in the band when that album came out are all reuniting to play this show. And yes, I'm hoping to go. Even though it's getting close to sold out already, I'm going to have to be like, so, Josh, you really want to let me into that show, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But anyway, so they're going to be doing this on August 9th in Portland, and I think that's really cool. And when I saw Switchfoot the first time was on the Hello Hurricane tour, and they played Hello Hurricane front to back because that's kind of how they had originally envisioned the album was as a package. It wasn't just like, oh, we wrote a bunch of songs. They all kind of are together, but this is the order that they kind of work on an album. But really, they all work separately. I think they originally thought of Hello Hurricane as being this, front to back piece.
Right.
And so they played Hello Hurricane front to back, and then they went on to play, their biggest hits from other records.
Yeah.
And I thought that it was very cool. What do you think about that idea?
I like that idea. It's one of those things that for me personally, I would have to know that that's what's happening. It would have to be, I wouldn't want to just show up and have them decide, well, tonight we're going to do things different and just play an album. But I like the idea of that kind of tour, like specifically for that. I know that's kind of what Fading West is. For Switchfoot right now is they were doing a thing where they would show the movie and then they would actually play the songs in the movie live was kind of how I was told it was going to go down.
Well, I think they did I think they played along with the movie,
right?
For like 2 or 3 dates, and then the rest of it they just showed the movie. Like when I saw them, they just showed the movie, and then they came out and they performed like maybe 2 or 3 songs, maybe 4 from the newest record in the movie, and then the rest of it was just normal. So it doesn't quite fit into that, but at the same time, I mean, it's very similar idea.
Yeah.
Well, let me rephrase the question: who would you just like if you could pick anybody? Is there a specific band that you would just love to tour and then you could choose, because we have this kind of power, and you could choose I want this band to tour and play, I want them to play other stuff too, but I want them to play this record, this specific record from this specific band all the way through.
Well, the first one that pops into my head that I would love would be DC Talk doing the Jesus Freak album.
That would be cool.
I would like to see that. Who else would I like to see in that regard? I mean, I would see Switchfoot doing Vice Verses. Vice Verses for me is my favorite album of theirs.
Yeah.
the classic Crime, I would love to see them do Vagabonds.
Yeah.
That I think would be phenomenal. Man, that's a great.
toughie, isn't
it is, because there's a lot of bands that like I don't really necessarily appreciate their album as a whole, but I like a few tracks on there, which is common. That's normal. But there's not a lot of bands to where I would think I would want to sit and listen to them play their album, play a particular album all the way through. So, those are the ones that just come off the top of my head that I would enjoy going and just enjoying them. I mean, I could do Audio Adrenaline with Bloom.
Right. Yeah, that would be cool.
Again,
it would have to be Mark, though.
Yes, it would. Exactly. And that's nothing against Kevin.
Right.
At all. But if they were to do that, Mark would have to be 100%.
Oh, yeah.
That's the only way that it would really make that work.
Yeah, agreed.
Agreed. So who would you?
I don't know. I mean, I think a very big contender would be Project 86 and Drawing Black Lines. POD and Satellite. I would feel for that, especially if they toured with Blindside and they would have that interaction and that guest vocal on there.
Right.
And if you really wanted to sweeten the deal, have Blindside on there doing their first album, because to me that's my favorite album of theirs. It's so raw, it's very cool, very different. As a matter of fact, and now if you wanted to make a dream tour for me, have POD, Project 86, and Blindside doing all three of those albums front to back. I would sell my blood to go to that show.
That's an all-day show right there, though.
Oh yeah.
I mean, because each album's like 45 minutes long.
That's not a problem.
Okay. Just making sure.
I am down with that. And also, I think it would be fun for Demon Hunter to either do their first album or maybe the Triptych. I think both of those records could be done front to back pretty well.
Okay.
That might be it. I mean, I would be totally down for Audio Adrenaline doing Bloom, but once again, like you said, it would have to be Mark, and he would have to be 100%. Otherwise, it would just be sad.
Yeah.
And Jesus Freak from DC Talk, I think that would be awesome. Maybe Guardian with Miracle Mile. I could totally go to that.
Ooh, yeah.
Because that to me that's their strongest album.
Well,
I just love that record.
As far as a rock album's concerned, yes. I still think my favorite album from them is Swing Swang Swung, but just because it showed so much versatility in their styles.
Oh yeah.
Sure. And it's just a cool album. But I would be down with Miracle Mile as an album played live. Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Who is your favorite show? You haven't really said who your favorite. You kind of pinpointed me like, what's your most memorable show? And you never asked yourself that same question.
Oh, I thought that's what the Living Sacrifice and Family Force 5.
Okay. Okay.
So, I mean, both of those, but I mean, every time I've seen Demon Hunter, it's always been memorable. And of course, Skillet, since they've gotten huge, their live show is just fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. I mean, those are and I mean the Newsboys was fun, and I got to see them I think they were on the Billy Graham tour or something, but we were like way up like in the Astrodome or the Summit in Houston or something, and we were in the nosebleeds. And
see, this is
cool.
I'm so fortunate to have the Phoenix here in Petaluma because I've seen a lot of great bands come through without a lot of huge draw, so you get an opportunity to be up close. There was a tour that was Silverline, Brian Head Welch before his band was called Love and Death. All the same members, but still, it was before it was called Love and Death. Disciple and Red all together in one venue, and just being there for that show, being up close to the stage and hanging out with them and enjoying what that tour was phenomenal. I mean, Red does a great job putting on a great show, and it was a small venue. They didn't have all their gear set up, but they still knocked it out of the park. I mean, their lead singer, I think, is Michael.
That sounds right, yeah.
He is phenomenal.
Yeah.
Absolutely phenomenal. And then, of course, Andrew and his brother, you've got their twins, but each, bald.
Although not anymore.
They're not twins anymore?
No, they're not both bald. Yeah, they untwinned each other.
Yeah. They one of them had plastic surgery and changed the way they look. Now, their drummer just recently stepped away.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they replace him. But I mean, I think he's sticking around long enough to get that new revamping of the latest record done. I don't know.
He was really good too, though.
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
I mean, and it was funny because he was the only one in the band with hair at the time that I saw them.
Right.
And it wasn't just hair, it was like long black hair.
Right.
You know, so he was definitely the odd man out when it came to that. So Tim and I used to joke that, well, I guess if they do end up finding a new drummer, then he's got to have long hair too, so that he can offset the other three guys in the band.
Right. Yeah, and I got to see that tour too. That was a really good tour, and I think that they did a fantastic job of picking a good lineup that had some versatility while still being very rockin', and they did a good job of playing not huge venues, because I saw them at a church that, while it was big, you were able to get as close as you wanted to be without too much trouble. So that was a really good tour. And then I think another memorable show that I wish I would have seen later in life was that Steve Taylor concert with Guardian opening. That was just, oh man, that dude at any age, he pulls off such an awesome stage presence. And my wife, not only did she come up with the idea for this week's show, but she was also reminding me to mention that one of the things that kind of gives you a hint into what some artists will go through to make sure they're giving you a good live show. Steve Taylor, back in his heyday, and I'm sure getting ready for this next tour off the new album will do something similar, but he used to jog in the morning beside their bus as it was going slowly along with headphones on, so singing at full volume to get his lungs in shape and his body in shape enough to where he could be able to do all the crazy antics that he does on stage while singing and not sucking.
Wow.
So, I mean, it's pretty incredible. I mean, the stuff that he was able to do, even though he was like in his 40s, I think, when I saw him, maybe mid 30s. And of course, now he's over 50. So it'll be cool to see what he's still pulls off. But I mean, it's just insane, you know, and you don't think about that. I mean, you always just think about rock stars just sitting around in the dressing room doing absolutely jack and then getting up and singing and then going to sleep or whatever. But
yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
It's a lot of work.
Exactly. My goodness. Well, that's, you know, the live show is definitely something that if you have an opportunity to go check out with any band. I mean, I saw Mercy Me and David Crowder do their thing, and you know, that was, while it was a lot more mellow than what I'm typically used to, they were still really good shows. They were enjoyable for what they were, but it's the kind of shows where typically people are sitting down in chairs watching the show. There's not like this open area down front. You go see Five Iron, which is always going to be a wild and crazy show. You know, that's one of those that that you have a pit and you're dancing around and everybody's skanking, because that's what the dancing for ska music is called, skanking. You know, you gotta do all that. I mean, when they were at Joshua Fest, I was backstage while the Supertones were playing, and Leonore Till was back there, and she put her arm around me and she's like, "Come on, let's skank!" And so we're standing backstage doing our thing. It was very funny. That's not something you'll see from me very often, by the way, just so you know. So, yeah, the live show is definitely something that's got a lot of great appeal, and it's something that is a lot of fun to go to if you have an opportunity. So, you know, find a band, go see a show, get out there, spend the money, support the band. You don't have to buy merch, but it's more helpful to them if you do. Yeah. You know, it's so much fun to go check them out. I was disappointed I didn't get to go see Switchfoot last night, but A, I was exhausted, and B, I knew that it just being a Wednesday and Sarah having to work, there was no way I was going to be able to get down to the city, see them, and get back in time for her to be able to go to work and do her thing. So it's always sad when a big band like that comes through. Thrice was the same way. They came through San Francisco on their farewell tour, and I could not get away to go see them. It just didn't work.
Right. Yeah.
So
I feel you, man.
Yep.
I feel you.
I hear
definitely
you.
worth going to go see. Don't watch a YouTube video and think you know what a live concert is.
Totally.
I've never been to one.
Totally. And I don't usually suggest this to most people, but when I go to shows, I wear earplugs.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you can actually hear it better.
Yes. And I have a pair that I bought from Amazon that are made by Etymotic Research. And what they're hollow in the middle, so that they allow the sound to pass through and into your ear. They just drop the volume level. So you still get all the clarity that you need in order to be able to hear and enjoy the show without the volume.
Yeah.
So something to check out. You know, the little squishy foam things will go in your ear, and they really muddy up the sound, in my opinion. But a decent pair, and I think I paid like $15 or $20 for them on Amazon. So they're not outrageous. They're reusable. You just wash them, silicone bits, and all of that stuff that you put in there. Get yourself a good pair of earphones, or of earplugs. Excuse me, a decent quality pair. And they will do you a great service in protecting your hearing, so that you'll not have to worry about deafness later on, or constant ringing in your ears, which I have. Let me see. A cool gig I went to see was Mike Rowe of the 77 solo. Only 50. Let's see. Only 50 let in, and he sat down and ripped out one song. Then took requests of his or the 77's material for the rest of the night.
It's nice to be able to go see somebody who can pull that off.
Yeah, totally. Kirk, the name of those, they're Etymotic, Etymotic, Etymotic Research, and you just look for Etymotic earplugs, and you'll be able to see. They have different dampening levels. I got the less one. I think it dampens the sound by 9 decibels or something like that. And so you can check those out. They're definitely worth it. Kirk, if you want, I can link you through Facebook later on if you have a hard time finding them. That way you can see which ones I ended up getting. They're definitely worth the investment, and I do not go to concerts without them.
Yeah, new.
At all. Do you have any noise trade picks this week, Paul?
Yeah, I got one. This is one that was reminded me by the same guy who reminded me about Love Like Gravity, and I actually found his name this time. Don't know how I missed it last time, but his name's Michael, and he sent me an email, so that was cool. So thank you for that. And this is the band A Road Less Traveled. I don't know if they're still doing stuff or not, but they have a 3-song EP that you can grab for free on Noise Trade, and this is a clip from one of their tunes. I think it's pretty cool. Here, tell me what you think.
Can you see that underneath them shattered things? My heart is broken, bring me back to life. So I knew is gone, I am going under. Please don't let me waste away. Now I'm crying out.
So pretty good. I don't know that I would say the rest of the songs in the EP are maybe as good as that one. That one's my favorite. It's called Underneath, but their EP is called Of a Captive Heart, and it's 3 songs, and you can grab that off a Noise Trade.
It's funny because their lead singer sounded a little bit like the guy from Since October.
I could see that, yeah. Yeah. Not though, but yeah, very, very similar.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. Sounds good though. I like it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know what time it is now?
Well, I'm guessing you don't have any more of the request deals, so yeah.
No. It is time to stymie Chris again.
Which you've done a good job of the last few weeks.
I know, it's kind of unfortunate, really, but anyway, we're going to play yet another track from the 8-Bit Hymnal Easter Edition, which is the third and evidently final offering from Tyler Larson. Which
right, because Easter is on Sunday.
Easter is on Sunday, so this one is... If you get this one, I'm going to be so shocked because I have never heard of this song before. So we'll see how this goes. But then again, you've surprised me in the past, so we'll see how this is. But let's see if Chris can figure out what hymn has been 8-bitized for this one. Here we go.
Then sings my soul.
Well, see, I would normally agree with you, but that isn't how it's titled.
Well, that's
surely he must have this written down wrong.
That must be, because that's what the song is. It's Then Sings My Soul.
Or How Great Thou Art, depending
on yeah, okay, yes. But
yes.
It's the same song.
Yeah, but he has it titled O Store Good. As in the letter O, the word store, as in you go to the grocery store, and then good, G-U-D.
So maybe. I wonder if that's... I wonder How Great Thou Art. I wonder if it's like a German song or some other language that was translated from?
Could be, but I'll still give you credit on that because, yeah, that totally would have been my guess, too. And that seems like kind of a technicality, but that was good, though.
Yeah. Huh.
We're both kind of stymied now. We're like, how in the world did he get that?
Yeah, that's crazy, but okay, good.
So yeah, evidently it's Swedish.
Huh.
But yeah, it's the same as Oh Great Thou Art.
Okay.
Oh Store Good / How Great Thou Art. So yeah.
Good deal.
Written by Johan Sigurdsson or something like that.
Interesting.
Sigvardsson.
Yeah.
Sigvardsson.
Sigvardsson. Mm-hmm.
Sigvardsson.
Is that like Farfignugan?
Something like that. I'm from Fargo, don't you know?
Yeah. I guess that's a TV show now.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, they reimagined the movie as a TV show. I was listening to another podcast that was talking about it, and apparently it's pretty decent, but it takes a lot of different turns than the movie did. So,
yeah,
I don't know.
I haven't seen it yet. It's been a long time since I've seen the movie too. So, well, I have a Bad Christians podcast downloaded, but I haven't taken the time to listen to it yet. And apparently, according to my good friend Tim, he said it's not real family friendly, so I got to find a time to listen to it when I'm not in the car with the kids.
Right.
So, but Tim says it's interesting, just to kind of hear their take on some things and the conversations they have and that kind of stuff. So,
right.
I can't say I recommend it, but if you are on your own and you're looking for something to check out, you certainly are free to investigate the Bad Christians podcast. So,
right. Yeah.
Well, let me think. That is going to do it for us. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, anything along those lines, you can email us, rockinaHardPlacePodcast@gmail.com. You can hit us up on Facebook. That is facebook.com/rockinaHardPlacePodcast, or on our website, rockinaHardPlacePodcast.com. We would love to hear from you. Still looking for people to go to iTunes and actually give us new ratings so that we can climb the iTunes ratings chart. That will help us get more listeners and expand our audience a little bit, and we would have you to thank for it.
Yeah.
So that is going to do it for this show this week. We love the fact that you take your time to listen, and we appreciate it greatly. And we just want to say thank you so much. I'm Chris Cooner.
And I'm Paul Gibson.
And we will definitely catch you next week.
Sounds good.
See ya. All right, and we can stop now.